The story begins with three friends. The three of them had gone desert spider hunting together and followed the trail all the way into the desert. After searching for a while, one of them spotted a gemstone. But the moment he moved that stone, he was instantly horrified to the point of freezing in place, for right beneath it was a deep, dark abyss. Terrified, he immediately called his two friends over. Then, he opened a canister of toxic gas and began pumping it into the hole. A moment later, as the man leaned down to look into the hole, a spider from inside suddenly lunged out and attacked with lightning speed. The moment he was bitten by the spider, he writhed in violent agony. At the same time, the entire swarm of spiders in the hole, driven out by the toxic gas, began to scatter in a frenzy. Seeing this, the two remaining friends hurriedly caught each spider and locked them in boxes. Meanwhile, their teammate who was bitten by the spider was rolling on the ground in ultimate pain. Seeing his friend struggling like that, one man used a dagger to kill him. Afterward, the two of them took those dangerous spiders all over the world to sell for money. Next, the scene shifts to a young man named Caleb. He arrived to sell stolen goods. Because the shop owner was afraid someone might see the illegal items, he took Caleb into a back room. There, Caleb saw a box containing an extremely dangerous spider. The moment he saw that spider, Caleb liked it at first sight, so he spent 150 euros to buy it and take it home. Afterward, Caleb went to meet a friend named Matthews, who also made money through petty theft while Caleb worked as a shoe seller. Both relied on selling stolen goods to cover their living expenses. A while later, when Caleb finished his work and returned home, he saw his sister Manon renovating the house. Seeing this, Caleb left in irritation and went straight to his room. When the light appeared, it was revealed that his room was already home to many strange creatures, species that lived off the warmth of the lamps, such as venomous scorpions, cockroaches, and even highly unusual-looking frogs. Caleb's entire room looked exactly like a toxic warehouse, missing only one poisonous spider. Right then, Caleb took the spider he had just bought out of his bag, looked at it carefully, and named it Baby. Then he opened a shoebox nearby, lined the inside with tissue paper, and locked the spider inside. Afterward, he went back out to scold his sister Manon for turning off the lights. But instead of admitting fault, Manon got angry at Caleb because leaving the lights on all day had doubled the electricity bill. Meanwhile, inside Caleb's room, Baby had chewed through the box and escaped. A few hours later, when Caleb returned to his room and opened the box to check, only to find Baby gone, he truly panicked and immediately turned the whole room upside down to find it. During the search, Caleb discovered a spider egg in the room, so he locked it in a box and went to sleep right away. The next morning, Manon woke Caleb up because a friend of his had arrived early to fix the toilet. Therefore, Caleb took a new pair of shoes to a friend named Tamani to deliver them. But there, Gills began to suspect Caleb. He believed Caleb was using the shoe sales as a front for drug trafficking, so he warned that from now on, he would be keeping an eye on him. Afterward, Tamani took the new shoes out to try them on. But just as he took a step, his foot was suddenly bitten hard by something. Tamani immediately took off the shoe to check and saw the spider inside suddenly crawl out and start climbing up his arm. Tamani quickly swatted it down and used the very same shoe to crush it to death on the spot. However, a moment later, when looking closely into the shoe, Tamani was horrified to see countless tiny baby spiders crawling out and lunging to attack him. At the same time, Tamani's dog, thinking the dead spider was food, swallowed it whole, completely unaware of the painful price it would have to pay. After Caleb returned home, he saw a few of his friends engrossed in looking at his pets, but they had no idea that Caleb had a hobby of collecting forbidden creatures. At that moment, Caleb's phone received a call from Tamani, but he did not answer. A while later, after the group of friends had left the room, Caleb even carefully stuffed cloth under the door crack so he could safely call Tamani back. But this time, Tamani could no longer pick up the phone because the pain from being bitten by countless spiders was torturing him violently. Tamani's entire body was covered in bites, and a yellow fluid was even leaking from his eyes. Despite being in such a horrific state, Tamani still tried to pick up the phone, but unfortunately, he stumbled and collapsed onto the floor. As he fell, nearby glassware shattered, causing glass shards to pierce his body and making his injuries extremely severe. Tamani's dog, having eaten the spider, kept barking incessantly. The sound of the dog barking made Tamani's neighbors extremely annoyed and worried. They gathered in front of the door and decided to call Tamani out to talk, but no one opened the door. Everyone began to panic even more, until Caleb broke down the door and stood frozen when he saw Tamani's corpse lying right before his eyes. A sight that caused the neighbors to immediately call the police. Everyone was deeply shocked by Tamani's death because it happened so suddenly and was extremely mysterious. Seeing the condition of the body, Even the police had to wear masks while investigating. As for the neighbors, they were so frightened that they began to gossip about all sorts of causes for the death. Soon after, everyone began arguing loudly, but the police tried to calm them down and ordered everyone back to their rooms. Afterward, Tamani's body was taken away. Next, Caleb and a few friends took Tamani's dog back to his place to foster it temporarily after Tamani's death. Among them, various rumors about the death broke out again. At the same time, in another place, a cleaning woman entered a room to tidy up, set down her cleaning tools, and was about to leave when she suddenly discovered many spiders clinging tightly to the ceiling. She thought they were just ordinary spiders, so she took out a spray can and sprayed them, but she had no idea that those very spiders could become the cause of her death. Because of the spray, the spiders began to crawl away and followed a path to Caleb's bathroom, where Jordy's girlfriend, Leela, was busy washing her hands. Just then, Leela noticed a vent cover lying on the floor, so she picked it up, stood on a stool, and intended to put the grate back in its place. However, her foot suddenly slipped off the stool, causing her to fall hard onto the floor. Despite this, Leela still tried to get up, and at that moment, she saw the hanging curtain in front of her shaking. She immediately pulled the curtain aside to check, but there was nothing there. Yet, in that very instant, a spider suddenly lunged forward. At that moment, the spider's sudden attack terrified Leela so much that she didn't dare run outside, but instead crawled straight into the shower area to hide. Simultaneously, she screamed loudly for help. Hearing her piercing cries, Jordy rushed over immediately, but because he was the type of person who didn't like killing animals, instead of crushing the spider, he tried to find a glass cup to trap it. However, he couldn't do it. The spider quickly jumped away and dove down into the sink to hide. Hearing the commotion, Jordy's two friends, Caleb and Matthews, also rushed over. Each gave different instructions on how to catch the spider, making Jordy even more confused and frustrated. In a fit of anger, he grabbed a mop and repeatedly struck hard under the table. But the spider not only didn't die, but also crawled up the mop handle, then lunged to attack and clung straight onto the door. That sight made Jordy even more furious. He quickly swatted the spider to the ground, slammed a table down over it, and used his feet to stomp on it repeatedly. But when Jordy lifted the table to check, he stood frozen because countless tiny baby spiders began crawling out from underneath. Witnessing this, Jordy panicked completely, so he immediately pulled Leela out of the shower, and the group quickly shut the bathroom door tightly from the outside so the spiders couldn't escape. Amidst that chaos, Jordy turned to force Caleb to tell the truth. Where on earth did these spiders come from? Caleb had to confess directly that he had bought an illegal spider, but it was originally much smaller than the current spiders. Hearing this, Matthew speculated that the spider must have grown extremely fast due to the environment and had given birth to many others. Right then, Caleb suddenly remembered the spider egg he had picked up earlier, so everyone opened the box to look and found that inside was now completely filled with a spider nest. Terrified, Caleb hurriedly closed the lid and wrapped duct tape tightly around it to prevent the spiders from escaping. In another development, the cleaning woman from earlier discovered a dead spider while cleaning. As she was leaning down to look closely at it, a police officer present there announced that all residents in the building had been quarantined. Having said that, he closed the door and left. Now, the woman began to walk further with ever-increasing fear, and she soon saw giant spider webs tangled everywhere, with bird carcasses trapped and frozen stiff inside. Utterly horrified, she quickly set up a ladder, climbed up, and opened a ceiling hatch to check. But the moment she looked inside, her eyes widened in terror, because the ceiling space above was also dense with spider nests and webs closing in like a giant hive. The woman immediately covered her mouth and sprayed chemicals into it repeatedly. But just as she turned on a light to observe more closely, a spider suddenly lunged out to attack, causing her to startle, slip, and tumble down from the ladder. Meanwhile, Leela and those with her decided not to follow the police orders anymore and wanted to leave the building immediately. Matthews, specifically, did not want to go along. He chose to stay behind because he was being hunted by the police in many places due to his involvement in thefts. Caleb also decided to stay with the reason of wanting to protect the people still in the building. But after being repeatedly pressured by his friends, both of them eventually agreed to leave. Afterward, the story shifts to another apartment where a black man was exercising while listening to music. While looking at himself in the mirror, he suddenly saw a spider crawling on the wall behind him, but when he spun around, there was nothing there. This frightened him so much that he began searching the whole room for the spider. After a while, he also saw it clinging to a wall. So, in a fit of rage, he threw a powerful kick intended to kill it. As a result, the spider didn't die, but the wall ended up with a hole straight through it. When he leaned in close to look into that hole, he discovered a massive patch of dense spider webs inside, and in the blink of an eye, all the spiders inside simultaneously lunged out to attack him. Elsewhere, Caleb and Matthews were going room to tell neighbors to leave the building quickly, but fear had gripped their hearts, making them afraid to step outside. Afterward, the two also stopped by the apartment of the man who had been exercising, but because the music in the room was too loud, they didn't hear his screams at all and just moved on. Next, they went to the room of a girl named Claudia. When she didn't open the door, Caleb and his friend let themselves in and saw Claudia lying fast asleep, but her appearance looked extremely strange. When Caleb approached to check, both were paralyzed with horror upon seeing countless spiders crawling out of Claudia's body. They were so terrified they were just about to run when an old man appeared before them, stumbling and begging for help. Seeing this, Matthews intended to go and save him, but Caleb immediately stopped him and said that the old man was already poisoned by spider bites. Therefore, instead of helping, the two turned and ran. Meanwhile, Leela tried to turn on the TV to watch the news, hoping to see a report about their own building. But there was no information on any channel. As for Jordy, he was online researching this spider species. Through his search, he discovered that this was an extremely special breed of spider, capable of changing its body size to a terrifying degree to destroy enemies. But just as Jordy was still reading the information, the sound of objects falling came from another room. He immediately followed the sound into the next room, and right behind the door, he saw a liquid flowing out. Going inside, Jordy discovered Tamani's dog was dead. And even more horrific, an extremely terrifying spider was crawling out of the dog's belly. In another place, the father of the black young man also discovered his son's body in an utterly disastrous state. As for the old man from earlier, he was still trying to catch and box each spider, but eventually, he too was bitten by a spider and died. Just like that, the people remaining in the building began to be killed off one by one. Amidst this, Caleb and Matthews had also returned to their room, where their friends were urging them to flee quickly. But just as the group prepared to leave, Gills sneakily approached them carrying a stick. Gills lunged straight at them, while simultaneously picking a fight with Matthews, and an argument and scuffle broke out. In his heated anger, Gills tried his best to force his way into Caleb's room, because he suspected Caleb was definitely dealing drugs. People risked their lives to block him because inside that room was extremely dangerous. They tried their hardest to stop Gills from entering. But the more he was blocked, the more he flew into a rage. Finally, Caleb let Gills enter the room. Just as he stepped inside, Gills immediately saw the box that Caleb had taped shut earlier. Without hesitation, Gills used a knife to rip the box open, and in the blink of an eye, countless spiders spilled out from inside and immediately lunged to attack him. Caleb and the others quickly retreated from the room while simultaneously locking the door tightly from the outside so the spiders couldn't escape. Hearing Gills' painful screams, everyone panicked and ran toward the stairs. But on the way, they saw countless spider webs stretched densely everywhere, making them even more terrified. Despite being very scared, the group still tried to move forward a bit further until they discovered a door tightly wrapped in spider webs from all four sides. But as soon as they opened that door, everyone stood in stunned silence. For inside, it was like an entire giant spider family was gathering. The entire walkway was filled with tangled spider silk, but ironically, that was the only way to get out. Having no other choice, everyone covered their heads and slowly moved forward. Meanwhile, Manon stayed behind, responsible for keeping the lights on. For the only thing that could keep the spiders away was light. Thanks to the light guiding the way and partially repelling the spider swarm, the group finally made it through that deadly path. However, just as Manon reached the end of the hallway, the light suddenly cut out and she was immediately caught straight in a giant spider web. Terrified to the extreme, Manon tremblingly flicked on the lighter she was holding to see, and right in front of her was a terrifying giant spider. She could only risk her life by using the lighter to save herself, then tried to escape and run back to her friends. Afterward, the group finally reached the main door, but unfortunately, that door had been locked tight from the outside. Having no other way, the group used all their strength to try and pry the door open a little. Right then, the police outside began releasing toxic gas inside to prevent them from opening the door. Nevertheless, they didn't give up and continued trying to open it, causing the police outside to panic to the point of firing shots inside without thinking. At this point, everyone realized that escaping was almost impossible. Therefore, they were forced to turn back and continue across the spider-filled path to return inside and go back to the stairwell area. Perhaps thanks to the toxic gas from before, the spider's swarm did not lunge to attack them at that moment. But while checking on everyone, they suddenly realized Jordy had disappeared. To find his friend, Caleb braved the danger, disregarding his own life to return to that horrific hallway. There, he discovered Jordy tightly trapped in spider webs. However, when a series of spiders lunged to attack, Caleb, though unwilling, was forced to leave. Right then, Matthews saw a liquid dripping down from the ceiling. When he looked up, he was instantly horrified because hanging from the ceiling were many human corpses trapped in spider webs. At the same time, a series of giant spiders began crawling out from the silk sheets on the ceiling. Caleb immediately shouted a warning for everyone to be careful, then led the group to flee from that place. Meanwhile, Jordy remained trapped in the spider web with no way out. Right then, Matthews saw a bag nearby containing a few flares. While Leela was still sobbing over Jordy's death, Matthews quickly took one out, lit it, then turned to tell everyone they would use these to drive the spiders away, then find a way to climb onto the roof to call for help. Immediately after, Matthews lit a flare and threw it hard onto the floor. The explosion made the spiders terrified, and they immediately retreated into hiding. Seizing that opportunity, Matthews turned the flare into a torch, told everyone to stay back, then took some gasoline from the bag and splashed it toward the spider swarm along with the flame. The heat of the fire caused the entire swarm to flee, however, half of them still turned back to attack them. Nonetheless, thanks to the light from the flashlights and the fire, Matthews still managed to keep them away so the group could continue moving forward. In another apartment in the building, piercing screams and chaotic noises rang out. Hearing those sounds, Caleb and his friends immediately ran to that apartment and told everyone to stay inside because it was extremely dangerous outside. Manon quickly picked the lock to Gil's room, brought everyone inside, and slammed the door shut before the spiders could arrive. At this point, Caleb was utterly devastated because he believed the entire disaster happening was caused by the very spider he had brought home. In the midst of that, the police also broke in and ordered everyone to leave immediately. But Caleb refused. He begged them to help save the neighbors still trapped. Conversely, instead of assisting, a police officer punched Caleb straight in the face. Infuriated, Caleb immediately fought back and lunged to attack. Manon immediately rushed to save him, but was also pushed aside by the police. Witnessing that, Matthews flew into a rage and attacked an officer, causing the two sides to fight violently. By the time the officer was choking Matthews almost to the point of death, Caleb saw a gun lying nearby. He grabbed it and fired straight at the officer. Right after that, the remaining police used gas canisters to attack the two girls, then restrained everyone and took them down to the garage. There, a group of scientists was trying to formulate an antidote to destroy the spiders. An officer present there angrily said that Caleb's group was ruining their mission. Hearing this, Caleb also screamed in anger that they had done everything just to save the people in the building. But as soon as he finished speaking, Matthews began coughing violently. This was because he had previously been bitten by a spider and poisoned. Knowing he might not survive, Matthews decided that before he died, he had to help his friends escape this place. He quickly rushed to the generator and shut it off, plunging the entire area into darkness. Taking advantage of the chaos, he shoved the police officer standing near the door and opened a path to run outside. At that very moment, from a nearby room, countless giant spiders began to pour out. The police saw this and fired continuously into the swarm, but their numbers were so vast that all efforts were almost in vain. Seizing that opportunity, Caleb pulled Leela along to flee and then hid behind a car. There, Leela used her lighter to heat and break the handcuffs for Caleb. But right then, Caleb suddenly remembered that Manon was still left behind. Seeing the situation getting worse, Caleb immediately told Leela to hide in the car for safety, while he himself went back to find Manon. After a while of weaving through gunfire and danger, Caleb finally found his sister, but while escaping, his leg was severely injured. Manon immediately smashed a car window, pulled Caleb inside to hide, and tearfully apologized to her brother for all her past mistakes. However, before they could breathe a sigh of relief, giant spiders appeared before them, slowly advancing. They were preparing to lunge for an attack when suddenly, from behind, Leela switched on the car's headlights, shining them directly at the spider swarm, making them terrified and retreat. Grabbing that life-saving opportunity, the two siblings immediately ran to Leela's car and jumped inside. Leela stepped on the gas at full speed, driving the car away and running over the spiders to clear an escape route. But after going only a short distance, a giant spider, much larger than all the previous ones, suddenly blocked the front of the car. Seeing that massive creature, everyone was paralyzed with fear. In the most critical moment, Leela quick-wittedly turned off all the car lights, causing the spider to lose interest in them and quietly walk away. Afterward, thanks to Leela's calmness and bravery, the group finally drove out of that horrific place. And so they survived, escaping from the deadly spider swarm. Closing this haunting story here.